On the 4th of June 1941, an old man died in the Netherlands. His death would be a watershed moment in German and European history, for he was no ordinary man, but the former Emperor of Germany, Wilhelm II. He died in the Netherlands under German occupation, but an occupation by a political regime that he had come to despise. When the 82-year-old former Emperor and King of Prussia passed away in his bedroom at his Dutch estate, Huis Doorn, it was to many the final end of the old imperial system. The Kaiser had ruled Germany since the death of his father in 1888, and he was a strange and complicated individual whose actions would drag Germany into the First World War and ultimately cost him his thrones. A headstrong and rather arrogant individual, his withered left arm, the result of a difficult birth, left him with personality problems that manifested themselves in his relationships with his ministers and foreign countries. In particular, he developed a loathing for the British, despite being Queen Victoria's favourite grandson, based, it seems, on the fact that it was an English doctor who delivered him and probably caused the damage to his left arm. In the hyper-masculine world of 19th century royalty and aristocracy, Wilhelm overcompensated for his deformity by overt displays of manhood, one being his fascination with the military and uniforms. The events that led to the disaster of World War I are out of the scope of this video, but with a left-wing revolution breaking out on the home front in October to November 1918, and the war-weary German army having failed to secure a war-changing victory on the Western Front, Wilhelm's position as emperor became untenable and he was urged to abdicate. He hoped to retain the kingship of Prussia, but this was not possible, and reluctantly Wilhelm bowed to the inevitable and abdicated, also giving up the rights of his eldest son and heir Crown Prince Wilhelm to the thrones. The Kaiser still hoped that the monarchy would be re-established once the situation in Germany had been stabilized, with one of his politically untainted grandsons as the new emperor. With talk of the Entente powers putting Wilhelm on trial as a war criminal, the Kaiser, along with a small staff of adjutants, courtiers and servants, boarded the imperial train and fled into exile in the neutral Netherlands, whose monarch, his relative Queen Wilhelmina, refused to hand the Kaiser over to the victorious powers. Wilhelm settled first in a country house at Amangen, before in 1920 purchasing Huis Doorn, a handsome brick-built Dutch manor house, buying it from film star Audrey Hepburn's mother, who was a Dutch baroness. The Kaiser and his ailing empress moved in on the 15th of May 1920. Incredibly, the new Weimar Republic in Germany allowed Wilhelm to furnish his new house with treasures taken from the Potsdam Palace, his former imperial home in Berlin, and over 60 railway wagons filled with furniture, art, antiques, china, and personal items were shipped to Doorn and crammed into the house, which, though large by modern ordinary standards, was tiny in comparison to the great palace he had left behind. And here the Kaiser remained for the rest of his life. He was not permitted to travel more than 10 kilometers from his home without permission from the local authorities, and largely remained in this proximity. He amused himself by chopping down trees and donating the firewood to local families, and in writing, giving interviews, and carefully monitoring events back in Germany. When Hitler came to power in 1933, Wilhelm began to hope that the Nazis would restore the monarchy. Following the death of his first wife at Doorn, Wilhelm had married again, and the new empress actively petitioned the Nazi government on the Kaiser's behalf. The problem was Hitler, a World War I combat veteran who blamed the Kaiser for Germany's defeat and also had no need of a rival figurehead in Germany to compete with the cult of personality that he was carefully constructing around himself. As I have covered in a previous video, many members of the Kaiser's family joined the Nazi Party and actively courted Nazi leaders, but all to no avail. Hermann Göring once visited the Kaiser at Doorn and was entertained in this room, but the Kaiser greatly disliked Göring and the meeting did not go well. The Kaiser, like many of his class and time, had made casual anti-Semitic remarks throughout his life, but he was genuinely appalled by Hitler's treatment of the Jews, and Wilhelm gradually became very hostile to the Nazis because of this. He was disgusted by the reaction of his fourth son, Prince August Wilhelm, who was a vocal supporter of Hitler, and who supported the Nazis' 1938 pogrom against the Jews, thereafter called Kristallnacht, or Night of Broken Glass. The Kaiser showed his disgust at the pogrom in a meeting at Doorn with all of his sons. Prince August Wilhelm, however, contradicted his father, as the Kaiser wrote, quote, "He had the nerve to say that he agreed with the Jewish pogroms and understood why they had come about. When I told them that any decent man would describe these actions as gangsterism, he appeared totally indifferent. He is completely lost to our family." End quote. The Kaiser also said, quote, "For the first time, I am ashamed to be a German." End quote. His loathing of Hitler was made public when he said of the Führer and his movement, quote, "For a few months I was inclined to believe in National Socialism. I thought of it as a necessary fever, and I was gratified to see that there were associated with it for a time some of the wisest and most outstanding Germans. But these, one by one, he has got rid of or even killed. He had left nothing but a bunch of shirted gangsters. This man could bring home victories to our people each year without bringing home either glory or danger. But our Germany, which was a nation of poets and musicians, of artists and soldiers, he has made a nation of hysterics and hermits, engulfed in a mob and led by 1,000 liars or fanatics." End quote. When Germany overran Poland in 1939, the Kaiser, through his adjutant, wrote to Hitler to affirm that the House of Hohenzollern, the name of the German imperial family, remained loyal, and that one son and 8 grandsons of the Emperor were serving in Hitler's army. When the Netherlands fell to German forces in May 1940, the Kaiser was impressed and sent a telegram to Hitler that read, "My Führer, I congratulate you and hope that under your marvelous leadership the German monarchy will be restored completely." End quote. Hitler remained unimpressed by such flattery. When France, Wilhelm's greatest World War I enemy, surrendered in June 1940, Wilhelm again sent congratulations to Hitler. Quote, "Under the deeply moving impression of France's capitulation, I congratulate you and all the German armed forces on the God-given prodigious victory." End quote. The Kaiser's attempts to flatter Hitler, a man he evidently vocally disapproved of for his Jewish policies, were made in the hopes of a restoration of the German monarchy, and in this, Wilhelm's contradictory policy towards Hitler did not pay off. Hitler was on record as calling the Kaiser in private an idiot, and he saw through Wilhelm's desperate attempts to reverse the 1918 abdication. A special German army detachment now guarded Huis Doorn, and the Gestapo kept a close eye on Wilhelm and his household and the visitors that he received. Hitler also enacted the Prinzenerlass, or Prince's Law, ordering the removal of all imperial princes from the German armed forces. This was in response to the death of one of the Kaiser's grandsons in action in France in 1940. Prince Wilhelm's funeral at Potsdam Palace had attracted over 50,000 mourners and a large outpouring of sympathy for the old imperial family. Hitler was jealous and viewed the Kaiser and his family as a threat to his own hold over the German people. All of this became moot when the Kaiser, who was 82 years old, suddenly fell ill at Doorn with some kind of intestinal issue. He became bedridden, but rallied a few days before his death, his family believing that he would recover. However, during the night of the 4th of June 1941, Kaiser Wilhelm II suffered a pulmonary embolism, and at 11:30 a.m. he was pronounced dead by his doctors. The question now remained as to what to do with Wilhelm's body. The normal procedure should have been for the emperor to be interred among his ancestors in Berlin, and Hitler indeed had no objection to a grand state funeral, presided over, of course, by Hitler. The Nazis believed such a spectacle would confirm in the eyes of the German people Hitler as the rightful successor to the Kaiser. However, Wilhelm appeared to have foreseen such a possibility, and had given clear instructions that his body was not to be returned to Germany for burial until the monarchy had been restored. Wilhelm had already ordered the construction of a simple mausoleum in the grounds of his house, where his remains were to be interred, and strangely, Hitler actually grudgingly consented to the Kaiser's wishes. Due to his strongly expressed opinions about the Nazis and their anti-Semitism, Wilhelm had made it clear that he did not want any Nazi symbols displayed at his funeral. On this second point, however, the Kaiser was to be overruled. The German-occupied Netherlands was ruled by Reichskommissar Arthur Seyss-Inquart, an Austrian World War I veteran and former governor of the German-subsumed Austria and later of southern Poland. He was a strong supporter of Hitler's Jewish policies in both locations and bore responsibility for the deportations of thousands of Jews to concentration camps and the illegal confiscation of Jewish property. In the Netherlands, he commanded the civil administration of the country and held the rank of SS Obergruppenführer, or Lieutenant General. Following his death, the Kaiser was embalmed and then was dressed in a field marshal's uniform and his medals and decorations and laid out inside Huis Doorn for a period of mourning. The Kaiser's funeral was held at Huis Doorn on the 9th of June 1941. The Kaiser was dressed in this uniform, one of a pair that he owned. This example kept in storage today at the house, the exact same uniform currently on the body of the Kaiser. The shoulder boards carry the rank insignia of a field marshal. No decorations or medals were worn on the uniform for the actual funeral, as the Kaiser would go to the next life as a simple, ordinary man. Instead, his multitude of decorations were taken from his uniform and displayed on a black cushion, and later given to his family, these medals still being privately owned by the Hohenzollern family today. The Kaiser's coffin was carried by his loyal servants down the front steps of the house and placed on a funeral Mercedes, the long procession of mourners forming up for the walk to the mausoleum. The chief mourners were Seyss-Inquart, World War I Field Marshal August von Mackensen, who appeared in full hussar's uniform, the German military governor of the Netherlands, Luftwaffe General Friedrich Christiansen, was there, along with a multitude of high-ranking Army, Navy, Air Force and SS officers. Members of the Kaiser's family and his entourage and special honor guards drawn from the Army, Luftwaffe and Navy, plus an army band playing suitable funereal music. Nazi swastikas were much in evidence, adorning giant floral wreaths from Hitler and other Nazi leaders. One of the swastika banners from Seyss-Inquart's large wreath still exists in the Huis Doorn collection. Faded by time, but nonetheless precisely what the Kaiser did not want to see at his funeral. That these symbols were so prominently displayed against the Kaiser's express wishes demonstrates how much contempt the Nazis had for Wilhelm even in death. Following his caustic anti-Nazi statements over several years, the small-minded Nazi leadership couldn't resist the opportunity to demonstrate who were the masters now, a point undoubtedly not lost on Wilhelm's widow and the Kaiser's family. On arrival at the mausoleum, an army honor guard fired a salute before Wilhelm's coffin was removed from the hearse and carried with great solemnity into the mausoleum and placed inside, draped in a large imperial battle standard. When Allied forces liberated the Netherlands in 1945, Huis Doorn was placed off-limits to soldiers to prevent any looting of the property or disturbance of the Kaiser's body. The house and its contents were seized by the Dutch state as enemy assets. Crown Prince Wilhelm, the Kaiser's eldest son, claimed the house, but the Dutch government decided not to return it to the Hohenzollern family, refusing the request in 1947. Since 1956, the house has been a museum, its grounds also open as a public park. But here is the weird part of the story. The Kaiser hasn't been buried. The mausoleum at Doorn belongs not to the Dutch government, but to the Hohenzollern family. I was not granted access to the mausoleum during my visit to the estate, which is usually only granted to Hohenzollern family members, but you can see inside through windows. The embalmed Kaiser lies fully dressed in his field marshal's uniform inside a heavy, lined wooden coffin slightly raised off the ground, draped in the German imperial flag. It is a somewhat eerie sight, and one suffused with an air of both melancholy but also of expectancy. He isn't buried or at rest. Instead, he lies in his coffin waiting. Waiting for what? For the restoration of the monarchy in Germany. Only then will he be buried in his homeland among his ancestors. Until that time, Kaiser Wilhelm II continues to wait. So far, the unburied emperor has waited in his wooden coffin for 82 years, and there is no sign yet that Germany may invite a Hohenzollern back to become emperor. So Wilhelm's lonely vigil in his little brick mausoleum will continue for the foreseeable future. Many thanks for watching. Please subscribe and share. And also visit my audiobook channel, War Stories with Mark Felton. You can also help to support both of my channels at PayPal and Patreon. Details in the description box below.